This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 45, about Agent Carter, season 2, episode 2, A View in the Dark. Welcome back to Defenders TV Podcast, Defenders. I'm Derek. I'm one of your hosts of this episode of Agent Carter on Defenders TV Podcast. This week we're talking about season 2, episode 2, A View in the Dark. Really looking forward to getting into this one.
Yeah, I'm your technical devil, John.
And rounding out the group, I'm Chris.
Welcome back, Chris. Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
Good to have you on board.
Hold on, where were we gone?
Been gone for a whole week.
That's true. Technically,
I know. A week is a long time in Agent Carter. And politics.
Yes, it is. For those of you who are following along with our coverage, we're obviously covering each episode of Agent Carter as they're released in the UK on Fox TV UK every Thursday night at 9 p.m. You can follow along with our live tweeting on that over on @DefendersCast on Twitter. So the first 2 episodes are released separately in the UK and Ireland. They were aired on the same night in the US, but we're covering the episodes once a week as they come out on Fox TV UK.
Yeah, that's right. And so if you have any feedback to give us, please send it in to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. And of course, the important thing is to let you guys know where we are on the interweb. And we can be found at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, where you can subscribe and listen to the podcasts, or just to search Defenders TV Podcasts in any other good podcast catcher, to listen to us and again to subscribe to the podcast feed. We're on to episode 2, season 2 of Agent Carter. Derek, have you got your little nuggets of information?
Yes, I do. This episode of Agent Carter was written by Eric Pearson, who also wrote episode 2 of season 1 of Agent Carter. And it's also written by Lindsay Allen, who wrote A Sin to Air, which was episode 6 of Agent Carter last season. Great to see these 2 writers back. Really enjoyed those 2 episodes last season. And this episode was also directed by Lawrence Trilling, who directed episode 1 of this season of Agent Carter. So he stayed on board for the first 2 episodes. Probably the reason why it was shown as a pilot, of the first 2 episodes back to back in the US, being directed by the same person. They kind of do feel kind of part of a whole, really, for myself. John, do you want to tell us what we got in this episode?
Sure. Agent Peggy Carter still holds suspicions about Isodyne Energy as she meets with Wilkes to help her with her investigation. He is initially hesitant to turn on his employer, but is eventually persuaded to inform on Isodyne, as he reveals that in an attempt to replicate the Manhattan Project, Isodyne had discovered a strange new phenomenon, and in doing so had also discovered zero matter. Unknown to the SSR, Chadwick is called to meet with a secretive council who shut down Isodyne Energy due to its seemingly lack of results, and want him to focus on his political ambitions. Just as Isodyne is being closed down by the council, the SSR move on the company, as Peggy and Wilkes try to confiscate the new substance in Isodyne's basement. But little do they know that another has designs on this new zero matter.
Thanks for that, John. The plot's certainly thickened this week.
Big time. Yeah. Absolutely. Really good episode. Loved the, loved knowing more about that black goo in Isodyne's basement, basically. And to obviously hear that it isn't dark matter, but zero matter. So whether that's just a play on the name, or whether it is a whole new thing entirely, or whether I believe this might be someone else's point as well about that dark goo. So I'm not going to go into it just yet.
Right. Chris, what did you think overall?
Overall, I really enjoyed this one, I have to admit. Last episode, I did have some slight negatives of the pilot, and I suppose what really would have shown... this was really like a large 2-hour, 1 episode.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was kind of the way it was always meant to be shown. The pacing was a lot better. So I kind of think that if they had shown them back to back, it would have been fantastic. So overall, this was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of kind of questionable moments for me. But I suppose that's what you get with 40-minute TV shows, where we're used to now hour-long TV shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Other than that, really enjoyed it, and it raised more questions than it answered, which was always a good thing for me.
Absolutely, absolutely, especially in the second episode. So really good. And I think it answered a few of your little questions from last week as well. So listeners, if this is your first time joining us for the second episode of Agent Carter Season 2, the way we cover our episodes is each of us take 5 points that we have found of interest in the episode. They could be good points, could be bad points, could be Easter eggs, could be scenes, and we discuss them. While discussing them, we hopefully will cover everything in the episode we want to talk about that we found interesting overall. Kicking us off this week, I think we'll pass it over to Chris. Do you want to give us your first point?
Sounds good. I'm actually going to go nowhere near the big standout 10 pieces from this episode. What I actually wanted to do was, I was really happy about the way the episode dealt head on with the issues of Wilkes being a black man working as a scientist in the 1940s. And why he had loyalty to Isodyne, being who he is, and why they were the only ones who give him a job and how he got the job. And then just showing kind of the bakery scene.
Yeah.
Which was like, you forgot about that in a predominantly Caucasian show in season 1. That this was actually true. This was what kind of was going on in the 1940s, even in La La Land Hollywood. Reggie and Haley, I thought had great chemistry together. Definitely. I really did. And I think it was the only fact that the actor and actresses, so this is my slight negative, okay?
Okay.
They had great chemistry, so they helped sell the fact that Peggy was so distraught by his apparent, what I'm calling an apparent death, at the end of the episode. Yeah. She's known him what? Less than a week, less than 2 days, gone on one date with him.
She calls it out, doesn't she? Yeah, she says, I've only known him a couple of days. Why should it be this painful for me kind of thing? Yeah.
But Atwell just brought it. She delivered it fantastically, that part of the end. I think it was their chemistry that sold it to me that, okay, this could happen. Yeah. Especially even when she was driving, she see her trying to hold back the tears when Jarvis is driving her home. And the tidbits of Peggy's youth, or Peggy Carter's youth, when they're in the bar. Yep.
Yep. Very cool, isn't it? To get a bit more backstory on Peggy. Very tiny amount. We just find out where she's from, really. But yeah, I really liked this whole approach in the episode. To your point, Chris, I think I have some similar notes that I took as I went along. Really loved the idea of confronting this head on, because, you know, when you see these kind of shows, and particularly with Peggy Carter, we knew she was getting a new love interest in season 2. You see this really good looking guy that's really into her. You see her being attracted to him, and you don't question it, because if this happened at any other show, there wouldn't be a problem. But they do call out specifically that is kind of a problem. There will be people looking at them as a couple because he's a black man and she's a white woman. They're going to look at them differently than they would nowadays on any TV show. So it's really good that they called it out. These kind of challenges that are there for other people. A lot of the big, I suppose, really interesting point about season 1 was seeing a woman trying to work in the workforce in the US. They've kind of dealt with that throughout season 1. So now they're trying to talk about some of the other issues that were going on in America at the time as well. I really like that choice.
Yeah, I thought this harked back to sort of Peggy in season 1 being, you know, a woman out of place and out of her time in relation to what she was doing, and society not being there, with her, you know, not at that same sort of moment in time or at that level. And I think here we're seeing that again here, where she is, you know, potentially falling in love, at least developing a friendship with, a black man here, which would have been seen as unusual in the late 40s, early 50s during this time. And so it helps to put Agent Carter really accurately, into sort of that social context, at the time, which I think is really good, because I think that was one of the big things of season 1 with Peggy in the SSR that I really liked. I think it also harks back to the point in season 1 as well, which is, you know, World War II was a huge social leveler for anyone in society. You had women who couldn't work suddenly working. And then you hear Wilkes' story about how, you know, he started off in, an orange grove, working there, picking oranges and so on. But that he, you know, with the war effort, you know, was employed by the Navy to do science stuff, and that, after the war, he kind of was able at least to continue that with Isodyne, even though he's saying he was very lucky to get that. But it's that idea that war became a great leveler of the social spectrum there, both either in the US, but also in Europe, where people who traditionally maybe were not seen as being able to work in certain professions or whatever were suddenly allowed to and were given that chance. And one of the problems was that after the war, people expected that it would go back to the way it was before the war. So I had that kind of tension. And I think definitely you're right, Chris, like that the Wilkes and Peggy thing of them getting to know one another was really good in this episode. I absolutely really liked it. I wonder whether Peggy's kind of tears or her, kind of fairly her sadness about, where is Wilkes at the end as well isn't tied up somewhat maybe with Sousa, and what's happened there with the fact that he has his new lady, and obviously there was a big rock involved in this episode with the ring.
Absolutely.
So I wonder whether, she's maybe feeling more emotional because, well, she feels like she's lost Sousa to his new fiance and girlfriend, but also now Wilkes, who was maybe the new start or filling in for Sousa, is gone as well. So she's stuck with Jarvis. And whilst she likes him,
he is married.
Yeah, but what a wife. Yeah, and look, I just wanted to kind of close this point off with, my God, those eclairs look delicious. Come on. That thing is the size of a fist.
They are amazing.
Well, you could not get that here. I'm like, I was salivating going, I really want that now. Just the cream and the chocolate and the dough, pastry, whatever. Pastry, yep.
I think seeing Peggy take it and throw it on the ground, definitely made me want to just jump through the screen and grab it back off them.
Well, 5 second rule.
There you go. My first point is kind of connected to this, and it's just kind of the point about Peggy finally getting her dance. So really one of the big moments in Captain America, the First Avenger, is that Peggy is on the phone to Steve as he's crashing down, essentially saying, I'll meet you at the dance next week. She never got that dance with Steve. Throughout season 1, we hear comments about that dance and the fact that she never got to have that dance. In this episode, we do see her finally get her dance with Wilkes. I think it's part of, I suppose, kind of tied into her reaction to his apparent disappearance or his apparent death at the end of the episode. She has now opened her heart up to a new man. This is the first time she's done that, really. She did pursue Sousa a little bit in the first season. There was a little bit of, I suppose, just a little bit of a meet cute, I suppose, in the first season, I guess you'd call it, where both characters kind of were playing with each other's emotions a little bit, but they never really ended off with any major relationship there. And there was still that little bit of playfulness at the start of the season. But now with Wilkes, there definitely seems to be a lot more going on there. She opens up to him. She gets the dance finally with him. And then at the end of the episode, he's ripped away from her. So, I think that's where all the emotion comes in from her.
Well, they do share a little kiss as well.
They do.
More than a little kiss. It lingers for approximately 5 seconds, I think.
I think it might.
Why were you counting?
No, I wasn't really. But I didn't see tongues. But you never know.
That would be improper for a lady like
it would indeed.
It certainly would.
And I think that kind of moves me on to my point where certainly there would be no tongues involved. But this is again Peggy and Jarvis's relationship, but in particular the Tortoise of Fury.
Oh yes.
I loved this scene, and in particular, not only the Tortoise of Fury, we had Judoka, which I don't even know whether that is a thing. I thought Sudoka, mixed with judo is this kind of Jarvis's intellectual, martial art or something, or steady hand martial art. He's got his Queensberry rules, he's got his fencing, but I do really, really enjoy Peggy's, final line, if you wouldn't mind slipping into something less athletic. Right. His latter day lycra suit or whatever, I don't know, hemp suit that they may have had back in those days, certainly left nothing to the imagination. I thought it was, I just thought it was really good. You know, you have the interaction again with Jarvis and his wife. You have Peggy throwing him onto the sort of the padded floor and all that. So, like, this was really, really good. And I think as well, this is continued with Mr. Stark's leisure car as well, which, again, just shows the rapport between the two and the fun. And I think, you know, this is an important part of Agent Carter, for me, and for each episode to have, this little bit of humor, this little bit of banter between these two protagonists. Maybe not all the time, but at least some hint of it. I think it is pretty good. And I think the car scene where, you know, she pulls one of the buttons or pushes a knob or something, and the next thing she's flung back and it's, oh good lord, there's a mirror. So you can only imagine. It is pent up sort of sexual frustration of the 40s, late 40s coming out here. I think it's really cool. I think it's very
absolutely good. Another great line from Anna Jarvis as the battle is going on between Peggy and her husband, where she goes, he's always most dangerous when he's on his back. Nice little gag there from Anna, which I really enjoyed. And yes, the car scene was another one of my points. I absolutely loved it in itself. This was a scene we saw at New York Comic Con at the Agent Carter presentation that was on at New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
We saw a bit of this scene, but in its glory in the center of this episode, I think it works so well when you effectively see that Howard Stark has gotten his entire team of the Q branch of his own company working on gadgets to make sure that he has the best night out ever, and can also get his car brought home the following morning. Really, really enjoyable scenes. Really good. Chris, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's the humor that, this is why I love kind of Agent Carter as a whole. That kind of camp humor, what Jarvis brings to it as a whole. Some people would think camp and derogatory. I think it's more just in that kind of early 1930s kind of style of English butler-esque type person.
Yeah.
What Paul Bettany, who plays Jarvis in the Iron Man films and the Avengers film, etc., now Vision, it's that same kind of voice and tone. I would be interested to see if someone did a mega cut and took all the jokes out of Agent Carter. Would it work as well? I think this is an ingrained part of the show, and Jarvis is, while being the comedic elements of who he is and kind of a lot of the slapstick elements, I think we've seen him at kind of hardcore in season 1 when he kind of does a bit of the fighting. And I think this was just a kind of, this will come back later on. Yeah. Yes, the judoka. Yeah. It's kind of like, he's going to end up backed into a corner, and then all of a sudden he'll do his, what was it called again?
The Tortoise of Fury.
Tortoise of Fury. I just love hearing you say that. Say it one more time.
Absolutely, one more.
Tortoise of Fury.
There you go.
Slow but deadly.
Fantastic. Yeah, really, really enjoyed it. Is it mathletics? Is that what he's doing?
Mathletics. It could be. Yeah.
Chris, do you want to give us your next point?
Okay, we've got the big one. And this, well, my variation of the big one. I know we all have a point on it of some way and form, so let's just start it off. We meet the Ominous Council.
Oh, yes.
Which actually, and I'd like to say, Ray Wise is back. Woohoo! Yes. He's returning as Hugh Jones. But yeah, so we see the Ominous Council, and basically we see the pin. And I want to get thoughts, people.
Yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
hear every bit. I had a lot of thoughts and kind of where my head was going. But additionally, about a week ago and a week and a half, there was an article in Entertainment Weekly with the two showrunners. Specifically, Michelle Fazekas. Yeah. Fazekas. She's come out and talked about it. So before we get into what the article says,
okay,
I'm going to get each of your thoughts, and then I'm going to give my thoughts, and then we'll go into the article.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, my big thought was I loved the idea of bringing back Ray Wise in here. So Ray Wise, for those of you who don't know the name, the actor played Leland Palmer on Twin Peaks, but more notably for Agent Carter was in season 1 as the head of Roxxon Oil Corporation, the oil corporation that is seen all across the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all across, I think pretty much every show has had some, or every movie and every show has had some mention of Roxxon Oil, and this is the head of the 1940s version of it. So really interesting to have him planted on the council right there. That's a really nefarious group if they have the head of the biggest oil company, which is probably quite nefarious in itself, sitting at that table, putting out his candle, in this great moment of that whole group getting together and making a decision without Calvin Chadwick's, knowledge at all. They've all made this decision without him. I love this idea. I love this behind closed doors gentleman's club, where they're making big decisions for the world. It's really interesting. It's like the Illuminati kind of idea as well.
Really the reverse evil Illuminati.
Exactly. Not the Marvel Universe Illuminati filled of heroes who do despicable things as well.
I know, but it's all for the greater good.
Yes.
Yeah.
The greater good.
I don't think these guys are doing greater good.
Don't think so, somehow.
Greater bad.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know too much about the council, if I'm absolutely honest. I thought it was nice to see head of Roxxon come back from that side of it. I still wonder whether is it some element of another nefarious organization, whether it be AIM or Hydra. But for me, the biggest thing was the pin, actually. So you saw it in the council chamber where they were all meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly right at the start then of Agent Carter this week, you saw a close-up of that pin. And for me, that did look exactly like an earlier version of the shuttle logo from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that's why I kind of mention Hydra in the same breath. And whether that is to be the case, I don't know. But like, I like that kind of link. And for me, the pin really did seem like that. I mean, I jotted it down because obviously, Chris, you had mentioned it last week. So I thought, well, yeah, no, this definitely seems to be that from what I could see.
Yeah.
But it still remains to be seen. But nonetheless, I kind of think so.
Yeah. So the one show we don't cover here on Defenders TV podcast is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we've noticed a few connections between particularly this episode and last week's episode and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 3. So what you're speaking about, John, in case some of our listeners don't know Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or haven't seen it, one of the big reveals of the first half of season 3, sorry kids, spoilers, but that effectively, that there is a connection between a program that sent an astronaut off to the moon. Their symbol actually has kind of transforms or evolves into the Hydra logo. And it's determined that this logo has been going back generations, decades, millennia, really, to the earliest versions of Hydra all the way up to the present day version of the Hydra symbol, I suppose. So, but definitely one of those points in the evolution of that logo looks very similar to the logo for this crew, if you want to call it a logo, the symbol for this crew.
Symbol. Yeah.
Yeah. So really interesting that there's this connection. There's another one that we will probably talk about a little later in the episode as well.
Yeah, no, look, I'm sitting with both of you guys. This is exactly these, as soon as I saw this, as soon as I properly saw it, I'm like, oh, so it's some kind of weird kind of World Security Council type thing. Straight away, again, this logo, I'm like, okay, it's a World Security thing with Hydra members?
Mm-hmm.
Question mark? So the weird part is they say this group was kind of responsible for the Great Depression.
Right. Yeah.
So, but we know Hydra was pretty much formed in Germany or in certain parts of the world with the Red Skull in World War II.
Hmm.
So, that's like, oh, it can't be Hydra.
No, we don't know that now, Chris.
Exactly. So I'm going, okay, well, look, we think it's Hydra. That's where I was betting, oh my God, if I had red or black, I'm like, I'm going red, it's all Hydra. This is what it is.
Yeah, so one of the elements in the S.H.I.E.L.D. episode is that they specifically call out that Hydra was not created in this world by Red Skull. He took the ideas of an organization called Hydra and enhanced them in the Marvel TV universe. Yeah, so I think you were right to put all your chips in, but it doesn't seem like the article from EW is saying the same thing, does it?
No, and this killed me. This absolutely kills me. So, in this article, the showrunner, Michelle, already confirms that this is not Hydra.
Ooh, okay.
But
Interesting.
Yeah, and in fact references the Council of Nine, and it's their version of the Secret Empire from Marvel Comics universe.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
So she kind of goes on around, like, so the big A is it's called the Arena Club.
Okay.
That's what the A is about. That's where they meet.
Right.
And the Council of Nine is the Secret Empire. Now, in the comic book universe, Secret Empire was a offshoot at originally, like a kind of mafia, money laundering businessman offshoot of Hydra.
Okay,
Fought
right.
Cap and the Cap kind of side of the SHIELD universe for years.
Yeah, yeah.
But she goes, it's not Hydra. It's the Secret Empire. And
Right.
I'm like, nope, I'm calling it fake. This was just, I know it's EW and I know she says it. No.
Michelle Fazekas and Tara Butters, you are pulling our legs.
But even if
Yeah.
even if it's true what they're saying, they are allowing scope for someone else to say this needs to be connected to Hydra. And there's a teensy wincy bit there that still links it to Hydra, with it being sort of one of the heads of Hydra. In this case, maybe the financial or money laundering part of it.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm going,
Yeah. So there's a way out there to link it in. I hope it is that is the connection, and that they're just calling a bluff here.
Yeah.
Sort of a clever bluff, and a meaningful one. To get speculation. Yeah, it may just be the Council of Nine and the Arena. But I mean, Arena just sounds so like, meh. So hopefully it is, Hydra.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going, look, this is a bluff. This is, to throw people off the scent. Like, we've all seen the pin and whatever. Like, anyone who watches multiple series or of the Marvel Cinematic Universe will go, oh, that looks familiar from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Like, there is a scene in there where Fitz and Simmons are basically going through the chronological creation from like early 1700s all the way up to kind of modern day Hydra, and I'm going like there. That is definitely in there.
It has to be.
It looks too much. The one just before the shuttle launch looks exactly like. Or the NASA launch one looks exactly like the A on this. And I'm going, yeah, I'm calling this is a bluff.
Yeah.
They basically, someone kind of guessed it too early. Like they kind of think, oh, we actually gave away this too early. So let's run a bluff and go, no, Secret Empire, the secret. And unless you really know the deep kind of lore of the Secret Empire, you're not going to get that it was originally. Now, it's not even connected to Hydra anymore.
Yeah.
In any more of the recent comics. It was just back in when Stan Lee and the boys were creating Cap. That was where it came from.
Right. It has some connection, essentially. And I suppose this particular encounter with the council does end off sending Calvin Chadwick off to pursue becoming a senator, doesn't it? So effectively they're looking to instate someone that's in their pocket into a very high position, much like Hydra did by putting people into S.H.I.E.L.D. and putting people into the government, and Hydra being everywhere. So it's very likely that if it's not Hydra in this universe, there is an easy way to connect it in, as John mentioned, definitely. I wonder if we're going to see a lot more of them. Are they the big bad of the season? We know that Whitney Frost obviously is going to be really involved throughout the rest of the season, and they're at odds with her. She is put at odds with them in this episode by the program being cancelled in Isodyne Energy. So that'll be quite interesting, whether we're going to see a huge amount more of them or whether it will just move off the focus off to Whitney Frost. They've laid this as a foundation overall, and maybe we won't see much more of them for the rest of the season. But interesting, though. And great to connect it with season one.
Yeah, I think these guys are going to be the puppet master, the true puppet master.
Right.
We're going to see Whitney Frost. She's going to try and infiltrate, because she knows, she's well aware of the council. So we're made aware of that. So I'd say she is the big bad, but she's going to take control somehow or infiltrate them somehow or something like that. I think these are our two big baddies.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think now it's what do they do with them and what do they actually name them? That's a different story.
Absolutely.
And finally, I was just kind of wondering whether, when Chief Thompson and his friend from the FBI are talking about powerful friends and even more powerful allies. Yeah. Given that the FBI are suddenly waltzing in and taking that pin and Dottie, is it these guys who are the powerful men, or are these the guys who are the more powerful allies?
Right.
As well. Right. So again, about this idea of the big bad, is it these guys, or is the more powerful allies still to be revealed?
Right. Yeah. Very good point.
And are they suddenly going to be connected, given that they're obviously trying to place someone in the Senate, that they've already placed someone in the newly formed FBI, and they're just essentially recovering their stuff for them.
Absolutely.
The things that could expose them.
Right. As we know, it's all connected, John.
It is. And I think with that's on to my next point. And it's a bit of a Roxxon point as well, but this time it kind of links into, it ain't dark matter, it's zero matter.
That should be the name of a song. It ain't dark matter, it's zero matter.
Yeah. There's some techno beats then, or some real, sort of
Wait, hold on.
street music.
I'm going to lay it down. Yeah.
It ain't. But I definitely am going, okay, so it's not dark matter. Maybe the zero matter is something completely different, or it is just another name for it, or another iteration on it. But there's certainly three things that I absolutely love about it. One is the link back to Roxxon. When they showed the old footage of it being created, it then imploded and sucked in all the vehicles and so on, which I think was what happened at the Roxxon plant.
That's exactly what happened at the Roxxon plant, yeah.
There's the link back to season 1 as well. Secondly, again, going back to your first point, Chris, the fact this is the nuclear age, this is where people are, the start of the Cold War, this is where people are, the zero-sum game of mutual self-assured mutual destruction with your nuclear arsenals and all this kind of stuff. The fact that it's created or discovered, more to the point, in the nucleus of a nuclear experiment, to replicate the Manhattan Project. I absolutely love. I love that idea.
Yeah.
It really appeals to the kind of the historian buff, in me. So that was really, really cool. And then just thirdly was at the end there with the face fissure, on Frost's face. The three F's, Frost, Fisher, and Face, where she seems to have that scar on her temple, which was kind of the same scar or fissure that you saw, in that old film footage. So almost like she's absorbed this dark matter, or in that very cool explosion that happened in the basement of Isodyne Energy, she has kind of been affected or wounded or scarred by it, and she's now, I don't know, it also reminded me slightly of Doctor Who with the fissure in time, the crack in time, I should say. So, I loved this. I thought this was a really nice bit, and I loved that old film footage as well, the way they did it. I thought that was pretty cool as well. So that's my point.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an excellent reveal of zero matter. I know it is different from what we were talking about last week with the Dark Force. It was slightly different from that, but obviously they've never experienced it before. They've come to name it, and they've named it zero matter. I totally agree with you. I love the idea that this company is trying to make money off creating nuclear weapons, and this is what they've come up with as a replacement for the Manhattan Project. I think they mentioned Fat Man or Little Boy, which I believe are the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs that were dropped during the war. Lovely little touches there to connect it all with the universe that's going on around World War II as well. So really interesting, and I love this idea. Really cool to see an element created by a scientific organization being used in the show to be such a huge moment, and potentially the creation of Whitney Frost's alter ego, which I'm really excited to see.
Exactly. And we see that, the vehicles were sucked into the implosion, haven't been seen again since.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they showed up on one of those planets that we saw in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, this is, everything connected. I'm loving the idea because this episode for me seemed to suggest that Agent Carter is immensely connected in a Doctor Who type fashion across space and time.
Yes. Yeah.
That was actually one of my points. That last glimpse we got of Whitney Frost with the kind of that scar that's being slowly opened up with the Dark Force. Now that's the thing. Did it seem to you guys like it was pulsating and kind of like ripping?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's do we call her Madame Mask now? Can we call her that?
Can we? Are we allowed to?
Yeah, it's kind of, she's becoming disfigured in the face.
Interesting, yeah. Yes, so just again, for the listeners who may not be aware, there is Whitney Frost's alter ego is Madame Mask, who has been slightly disfigured in the comic books version of the character. So yes, so this could be the creation of that version of Whitney Frost, which is quite cool. Really interesting creation of the character, if you ask me.
Can I ask, have they confirmed that has the showrunners or any of the writers or anything confirmed that Whitney Frost in this Marvel Cinematic Universe is Madame Mask?
Yes, they have. In fact, they released the character name as Whitney Frost, aka Madame Mask. So
okay,
so we can talk about it.
Excellent. Okay, grand. So potentially this is what I'm going to find really interesting, and I want to see this kind of origin of Madame Mask because in the comic books, she was kind of like the daughter of a big mafioso, or I think it's the mafia, which is, I think it's an extra F or something. It's Marvel Comic Book Universe's version of the mafia.
Right.
She's the daughter of the head honcho. She has no superhuman powers, but she's genius level kind of intellect. She's a weapons expert, scientific, but she's also raised by this kind of mafia like family, and she's kind of always in control while she's doing a bit of puppetry master in the background. So I'm kind of going, that plays into our Council of Nine. Her taking it over with becoming the head honcho or that kind of thing. But I want to see what you guys thought.
Yeah, no, very interesting.
That'd be cool.
Idea. Yeah, I know in the comic book, she was always seen as kind of a very opposite what would have happened to Iron Man if he had all that privilege and had turned bad, because she's backed up by tons of money, much like Iron Man is in the comics. So she's seen as they had a relationship, I believe, Tony Stark and Whitney Frost.
Yep.
So there is a very common ground between the two of them, and one of those kind of, I suppose, Batman Joker type of things. It's a similar kind of two sides to the same coin, which is, could he have gone bad at some point, if he'd gone down her path kind of idea. So be really interesting. I think they're probably going to play on the lines, and actually leading into my next point about Whitney Frost. I think you kind of mentioned it earlier on a little bit, John, but the parallel I think they're going to bring into the show this season is going to be about the parallel between Peggy Carter and Whitney Frost. And we see a little bit of that in this episode here, where effectively, even though she's a very famous Hollywood actress, very well known, she's being treated as poorly as Peggy was in the SSR by the director of her brand new film, who's essentially calls out to her that she's starting to get some wrinkles around the eyes, thought she looked younger than that, gives out to one of his lighting guys saying, "I thought you knew how to light older actresses," which is, you can see the anger on Whitney Frost's face building up, as if she believes her career is far better than this and shouldn't be treated like this by some dumb director. I think in a lesser show, she probably would have pulled out a gun at that point and taken him out. But I wanted to give him a slap myself anyway.
Well, I suspect Madame Mask will,
hunt him down.
Yeah, hunt him down and slap him, across the face and maybe just kill him. But yeah, no, that was an interesting thing, because it seemed as well that, like, she was just having a horrendous time. I think from episode 1, because she was there at the races and that's how we were introduced to her, and she was obviously, with the senator to be Calvin, Chadwick, you kind of thought she was probably not going to be treated like that in the slightest. And to see that was kind of quite a shock.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was an interesting thing, I thought, to show. And obviously it's probably going to sort of reflect back with whatever she becomes and transforms, with this Fisher now in terms of the Madam Mask. So yeah, that would be really cool.
Absolutely. And again,
so he's dead basically. The Nightmare director is dead.
Absolutely. Yeah. But again, bringing it back to Calvin Chadwick, coming back to her and telling her, well, the council turned down our plan. We're shutting down Isodyne. Your whole plan of doing zero matter is not gonna come off. Again, she's being talked down to, even though she's the one wearing the pants in the relationship. She looks like she gives in, but you can tell again in her eyes that she is not going to take this line down, and that's why she goes for the zero matter at the end of the episode. She's a very active character in the show. She's definitely not a passive little lady like they're all treating her throughout the episode.
No, absolutely.
But she does have a pretty bad episode this time. There's a lot of people pushing her down, and you wonder if she, since she doesn't have, I suppose, the values of Peggy Carter, is that the reason why she's pushing back and is going to become the villain of the show? So, really interesting to see these parallels. I do also want to jump in and say thanks so much for one of our followers and one of our listeners over on Twitter. Thanks to US TV Addict for pointing out my little gaffe in last week's episode where I mentioned that Whitney Frost is based on Rita Hayworth. She absolutely isn't. Rita Hayworth has absolutely nothing to do with the character. That was totally my note-taking gone wrong. The character is based on the actress Hedy Lamarr. Everything else I said last week was totally true. Hedy Lamarr was a very famous actress in the 40s who was a scientist and kind of hid that side of herself from the public eye, but invented some very well-known inventions, things like Wi-Fi that we all use today and are using right now. So a huge apology and a huge thank you to our listener there for pointing out my little gaffe. Total mistake in me notes, but thanks for that. And with that, John, do you want to give us your next point?
Yeah, I suppose as well, it's, obviously seeing the interaction that has happened between Whitney Frost and Zero Matter. I come to Zero Matter Part 2, which is, where is Wilkes? Wilkes is gone. He's there down, seemingly like those shuttles that you put all the money in from the till, and he chucks one of those up, it sucks around, picks up the Zero Matter, brings it back. He's confronted by Whitney Frost. You get that really cool kind of like dark explosion that happens at Isodyne. But then Wilkes is seemingly gone. So my point here is he gone? In terms of dead gone? Is he gone in terms of, is he in Whitney Frost's forehead? Is he gone in terms of he is on this other planet, that we're seeing in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at the moment? Has he been torn into another realm, another plane, or something like that? Or is he hiding? Has he just kind of gone to ground or something like that? I mean, what do you think? I mean, for me, I would be surprised if he's dead, but I'm suggest he's maybe gone where all the army personnel and vehicles have gone as well, and have been kind of sucked in to whatever is through that fissure, and via Whitney Frost's forehead.
Yeah, I was wondering one of the same things too. But again, for those of our listeners who don't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we were discussing last week. Remember that we think the Zero Matter is probably this looked very similar to the obelisk in its liquid form in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That turned out to be a portal to another world / dimension, universe, we're not quite sure. But people got stuck there. So we do know that the actor who plays Wilkes is in the show for the whole season. And that was a little gaffe that again was made with during one of his interviews. And so I think that's kind of, for me, that's kind of said he's not going to have kind of been sucked into this alternate universe or been kind of something like that. He's still around.
Yeah. Whatever
that means, be it, I don't know. Is he going to be powered or like disfigured or
have the evil worm in him?
Exactly. I just don't know. I think he's going to be there for this year. He could be our big bad.
You never know. You never know. I presume, at the very least, whatever's happened to Whitney has happened to him. Or, to John's point, the one thing that was definitely in my head was, what if he's in her head? That was very much suddenly going, uh-oh, what happens if the two of these guys have merged together with the power of zero matter? That's been incorporated into her, and he's now cool. Inside.
That would be cool.
That would be kind of interesting to have this character that was lovely in the first two episodes suddenly being part of Whitney Frost, who's supposed to be our big bad for the series. I have no idea whether that's possible. It would be marvelous.
I mean, The big worm obviously is again reference to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Anyone who isn't watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I do apologize for that. And that is, that's kind of evil, wormified or something, and it can take over different hosts. But again, that would be cool that he's merged with Whitney Frost and become like sort of Quato from like Total Recall. Yeah. So maybe like she'll open up her blouse and there'll be this like little kind of Quato thing from Total Recall.
Yeah, like his head is sticking out of her stomach or something. Yeah.
That'd be great. And if anyone wondering what reference, watch Total Recall.
The original.
Fantastic. Paul Van Hoven, Arnold Schwarzenegger, automatic taxis, 2 weeks. You watch it, it'll change your life. Great soundtrack as well. But with that, and with 5 kids to feed, Chris, what is, your next point?
This is actually my final point because we've talked a lot. I wanted to reference something you came back with or talked about earlier in that, Sousa's new girlfriend is on the scene.
Violet.
Absolutely.
Yes, Violet. Now, this is me just throwing in, where my head went straight away. Obviously, I'm in bad romances or had bad romances throughout my life. But basically, I saw this and she immediately clicked with Peggy. And, okay, obviously, who wouldn't enjoy talking with Peggy?
Of course.
But like,
beautiful British accent.
Exactly. But then, like, the assistant, Rose, she's not fooled and neither was I. I'm like going, oh, this is like... Well, hold on. I suppose I had 2 points there and I'm going to kind of separate them out. The first one is I find it really suspicious. Violet is suddenly so much in love with Sousa. And then as soon as she meets Peggy, wants to jump in and become best friends with her.
Right.
So I'm in my head, I'm going, oh, it's another Dottie. Shit. Great. It's another Dottie.
You're now having the experience I had last week in our first episode where just hearing about him having a girlfriend makes me want to go, she's evil.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm going. She's evil. Nope, she's bad. And it's just, I don't know. It was more when I saw her in this episode and saw how friendly she got. Because she's Secret Service, but in the wrong, or she's a secret agent, but in certain circles, she's well known. Mm-hmm. She was with Captain America, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Like, she's not absolutely that secret. So, I'm calling, and I don't know if I'm right, that Violet is some kind of double agent again, and was told to get in bed with Sousa. Kind of like, get in bed. Anyway.
I like it.
Thank you. And now that she saw Peggy, she's like, okay, best chance ever to get kind of not into bed with Peggy. I think she was told probably to kind of befriend Peggy and get very close. And then with Sousa and his ring, I'm like, oh no, his heart's going to be broken. Yeah, I think so.
No, go on. Go with your point. I will
okay.
Be talking about.
So then I also kind of went, okay, I'm going with Rose's point that she's like, that you're not in love with her, you're still in love with Peggy, kind of like, don't be a big fool. Kind of like, she says this to him in kind of paraphrasing, obviously. But so I don't think I think he's going to try and marry her. He's going to go ahead with the kind of engagement. Episode 8, we get a kind of big shock reveal that she's not going to be a Dottie from that same place, but she's probably going to be like from the Council of Nine, sent in to spy on, or the FBI is to spy on the SSR. I think I just don't trust any other women bar Peggy in this universe. It's just like, I see them, I'm like,
Angie.
evil.
And Angie from season 1. I'm still waiting for Angie to come back.
Yeah.
And Rose.
Oh, and Rose. There's a few.
But, okay, yeah, I suppose.
But for me, this episode definitely took back my idea from last week that Violet could possibly be an evil woman. Because I now see her as the girlfriend of Sousa that is going to have her heart broken when she realizes that the man she spent all this time getting to know, the man who was close to proposing to her, actually is just in love with a woman that he thought he wouldn't see again. He's now been hooked back up with her. There's that whole moment when Violet asks, is everything okay? And Sousa goes, yes, of course it is. Peggy's safe. Oh, I mean, yeah, everything's okay. Sousa's whole intention was to save Peggy this episode, not to find the zero matter, not to uncover the whole plot. It was all about saving Peggy and making sure she was okay still. So I think there's a lot more going on there. And I think that relationship between Violet is much more, or what we see of Violet in this episode is much more to show that she is a genuine, lovely person. But that's because my opinion has flipped in one episode from seeing her for 5 seconds thinking she's evil to now seeing her for an episode and going, no, actually, she's lovely.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are definitely still out on Violet, but I did think it was very telling, with Sousa when he realizes that Peggy's in danger. Like, you know, he is like, you know, gloves are off, look, warrant or no warrant, it's the end of playing nice guys with Isodyne, and he goes all out to go and find her, rescue her. So, I mean, in one way, I think it's either going to be that Violet gets a broken heart, or that she isn't what she seems, so we don't really care anyway. And so we want him to, you know, sweep Peggy Carter off her feet, and, you know, again, maybe do a 10-second kiss.
Nice. I think we've talked about all my points on this so far. John, do you have a final point to go through?
Yes, I have the sock on a doorknob, which is most definitely the, you know, one of the tracking devices that we see in that car scene, along with, I hasten to add, the emergency champagne and glasses, which is, you know, any fitting accessory for a leisure car.
Yeah. Have that in my Fiat Punto.
That this all comes in to help, you know, Sousa then sort of track down, and Jarvis track down Peggy Carter in trouble at Isodyne Energy. I love the fact that one of these devices for Howard Stark's own personal pleasure or leisure car is now being used to help essentially, you know, get the bad guys. So I like that.
Absolutely.
Know, they could maybe shine the mirror that's on the roof of the car into the baddie's eyes, disorientate them in some way, or, you know, celebrate the champagne afterwards.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was a really nice little connection to, the sock on a doorknob.
Yeah. And I love that it goes off as Jarvis is chasing Bernard Stark again, the flamingo, running around the front garden of the Stark mansion. And Anna shouts out the window, we've got a sock on the door. We've got a sock on the door. I just think it's a good little gag for quite a serious moment. Really, really good. Chris, do you have any notes on this episode?
Yeah, it's less of a note, but I don't want to belabor the point about Whitney Frost, but I'm kind of wondering, because she's kind of unpowered in the comic books. She's more super genius, kind of an amazing strategist, technology, that kind of thing. Very much a Tony Stark type character. Do you think, now that they're kind of doing this 1940s variation of her, where she'll be something to do with the zero matter, are they going to power her up?
I'm interested in that. I'm wondering if I know this is going to, again, what I think our listeners really do enjoy hearing is us get things completely wrong. So here's another one to mark in the book. I'm wondering if this zero matter will turn Madame Mask into someone who can almost shapeshift, who can also almost change her face to suit certain situations. She certainly can't act with a huge scratch on her head, with dark matter coming out of it. It was commented on about having lines on her face because of the lighting in her room. She definitely won't be able to walk on set the following day with a black mark down her head. So I'm wondering if she'll be able to heal that back up to make her face look slightly different if needed in certain situations, which would open up huge possibilities, for the rest of the series of the show. That's kind of my thought. If she was to be powered, that's something I think would be quite cool to have a bit of a shape-shifting character in there. Skrull, possibly. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, yourself, Chris?
Yeah, no, I that's where my head was going. Shape-shifting, right. Some kind of disguise ability, because what I loved about season 1 was seeing Peggy take down someone who was powered, quote unquote. So I want to see her do that again.
Yeah.
That's what the SSR were good at. And again, it all leads into my wackadoo theory that she's going to somehow take control of the Council of Nine. So she kind of takes her husband's spot or another council member's spot, or she kind of becomes Peggy for a couple of hours and wanders into the SSR, that kind of thing. I think that's exactly. I think she'll have the ability to change her face and her face. She just has to put on some hair. But I think that, again, that's why I don't think they'll leave an unpowered version in the universe when you've just given her the chance to. In theory, she could do anything. We have no idea what dark matter is or zero matter is.
We've no idea whether that particular thing that we saw at the end of the episode is that Whitney Frost or is that dark matter in the shape of Whitney Frost. We don't know that.
Yeah.
You know, that could be a possibility as well. Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting stuff. I've got just one note on this episode, and it just harkens back to our discussion last week about the office at the SSR, and what they were going to do with it. Did you notice the little gag they threw in there this week for you, Chris? And did you like it? So as Sousa comes out to the front of the office, he talks to Rose and says, "What's that clown doing over there?"
I did not like this one bit.
Oh, I thought this was hilarious. I can't even recount it without laughing. What's that clown doing over there? And you see a clown crying in the corner, and he's told that the clown is learning a lesson in rejection. I think that's brilliant.
No, I told you this is what they're gonna do every episode. They're gonna run out of puntastic puns very quickly.
Lindsay Allen, if you're listening, and Eric Pearson, if you're listening, thank you so much for another great gag in the front office. Keep doing those ones. Less of the dancing girls, more of the comedy cutaways.
Comedy cutaways of crying clowns.
Yeah. There you go.
I want to see like the Lion Tamer.
No, you're gonna, like, as I said last week, they're gonna end up having a dancing monkey. This is where it is going, people.
If it's building up to that, we'll take it, right?
I'll take a dancing monkey, but that's it.
If it's a lion tamer who's using a very small kitten, that would also be hilarious.
But to twist on it as well would be excellent, so that, you know, a ridiculous person comes in to audition and it ends up being someone that essentially pulls down the LA office of the SSR. Or maybe it's Dottie Underwood in disguise once she's escaped from New York. Or Angie comes in. So that, I reckon you could play with it, but then also make it into a crucial moment, where the SSR becomes vulnerable or something like that. Or to see, you know, old faces from season 1 like Angie, which would be quite cool, I think. Yeah.
Or I'd like to maybe see them have something like a person that's trying out was a famous actor in the 50s or something, and they tell him that he's a terrible actor. Something like that. And that would be quite a cool little use of it, but we'll see. So basically, I think my little note there is that, we've seen it now twice in 2 episodes. So I think we might be seeing it more throughout the rest of the episodes of the season. John, do you have any notes in the episode?
I do. I loved Wilkes' line to Peggy Carter when they're in the Dunbar Hotel, where, you know, he is going to spill the beans on Isidine to an extent, but he does have this really great line that he goes, "Before I risk my life and career, I want to get to know the woman whom I'm going to speak to," you know, essentially trust my life to, because it wasn't easy to get this job after the war, and you know, I think he talks about corporate lawyers at Isidine talking about treason, and being hanged and all this kind of stuff. So, I just thought it was a pretty special line from the episode. And then it's just something that to call, on something that you had said about the relationship between Calvin and Whitney. And I kind of like that tension between them that they had where, okay, Calvin Chadwick has sort of accepted that Isidine is going to get closed down, but she, you know, you can see she does not want the Zero Matter, to be, that project to be cancelled. And it shows even more when she says to Wilkes as they face off, over the Zero Matter, is that I'm the only person who knows what it's capable of. So, like, speaking to her sort of more, than absolute adequate scientific knowledge and skills and research that she has. Maybe she's even hiding that from Calvin. Yeah, so I think there's a bit of tension between the two of them, which I thought was really good to see in this episode too.
Yeah.
But I think with that, Chris, do you defend this episode of Agent Carter?
I do defend this episode of Agent Carter. Aside from the crying clown. No, I do. My only negative, again, it's not even a negative, it's just the viewing order we got was that basically that this felt like a part 2 of a series premiere. Again, it answered so many questions that in theory she should hopefully seen back to back, and then laid out a whole load more. But it's great. They're setting up a potentially fantastic another 8 episodes where we're going to end up potentially with a Hydra Star type council, Madame Mask, the dark. I keep calling it Dark Matter. I'm going to call it Dark Matter throughout this whole season. I'm sorry.
And it's Dark Force, Zero Matter. But you're combining the two, so it's okay.
I think we've all been saying dark matter, and it's at this stage it's interchangeable.
Yeah, exactly.
From now on, it's interchangeable.
Okay.
If we say dark matter, we actually mean zero matter.
Or if we say dark force.
Or dark force, yeah.
It's pretty much, it's all the same. But no, I have to admit, I really enjoyed this episode. It touched on, again, it's nice to see Marvel touching on 1940s prejudice.
Mm-hmm.
In a kind of way that kids wouldn't even know that they were seeing this until they went, what does that mean? They'd actually question it. Like, we wouldn't bat an eyelid now to a black gentleman and a white woman kissing. Not a thing. But back then it would have been huge. And like most shows would have not called it out. They called it out and made a fair point of it. I've already talked about the council, and then Whitney.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. But I'm closing with saying, I don't trust Violet.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. On next week's episode of
We Don't Trust Violet.
That would be an amazing show. I just from the name alone, I'm like, I like it.
So, Derek, do you defend this episode of Agent Carter?
Yes, I absolutely defend this episode. This was the most Marvel-filled episode we've had. It's really does feel like much more of a comic book show. Last season did feel obviously really good, and I absolutely loved it, but it felt like the character of Peggy Carter from the movies got her own spin-off show. This feels like the character of Agent Carter from the comic books has now got her comic book show, which I'm really enjoying. I'm enjoying the touches. And again, I said it last week that this is a nice break from Jessica Jones. Now I'm just involved in the show already. If we'd seen these episodes back to back, as Chris mentioned, it would have felt like a real good kickoff for the show. It would have felt like now we're back in here. I think our point last week was this was like a nice warm blanket, getting back with our friends and getting back with the family of the Agent Carter universe. By having these 2 episodes back to back, it probably would have felt like you're back in the universe of Agent Carter and you're able to experience a big adventure with them. I loved everything we got in this episode. I loved a new relationship starting off with Wilkes, although it may have ended badly. I loved Jarvis and Peggy's interplay at the beginning of the episode. Still loads of fun. I loved seeing Bernard back as well. Great fun. So much stuff going on again, and so much stuff set up with the council, with Whitney Frost, and how bad is she going to be? What's she going to be doing for the rest of the season? Loads of really interesting stuff. So absolutely defend this episode of Agent Carter. John, do you defend this episode of Agent Carter?
You'll be surprised to hear that I do defend this episode of Agent Carter. I'm going to give it a nice big juicy 4 tortoises of fury out of 5 tortoises of fury. So you could say it's the Mutant Ninja Turtles on this episode of Agent Carter. To me, this was filled with big juicy questions. What's on Whitney's forehead? Where is Wilkes? Who is Violet? Is Peggy ever going to get a man? Because it seems like this is eluding her. It was really good. We have the nefarious council being brought in. We have some really good social commentary in this episode. And again, it's just so intriguing. And we have the Zero Matter and we see some of what it's capable of. And hopefully we're going to see more of that, along with the answers of all the questions kind of posed in this episode. And I think I'm most excited to see what happens to Whitney Frost.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just thought this was an excellent episode of Agent Carter, because under all of that, there was also that fun and lightness that I talked about last week, which I just think for me is integral. So I love the fact that it's there, and I love the fact that it means something, even down to the sock on the doorknob.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. I definitely defend this episode of Agent Carter.
Excellent. Another episode defended. Thanks, guys. We don't have any feedback this week. What we are going to talk about very quickly is our poll results that we put out for Jessica Jones. So
I don't think they're valid. There was no UN observer in this. I feel as though my sit on the fence voice wasn't heard fully across all social platforms.
Well, let me give the listeners a recap of what we asked. So we said, does Jessica Jones fly in the Netflix TV series? Since we've seen the full episodes of the show, at the end we had a little bit of a discussion, particularly between myself and Chris, as to whether she flew during the show. So we threw it out to our listeners on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Google+. The specific question that was asked from Chris, or the proposition that came from Team Chris, was, yes, she is the first superhero in the MCU that flies under her own power. From Team Derek, it was, no, it's more like what the Hulk does, using her strength to jump in the air. And from Team John, it was, either way, she can do a mean hop, skip, or jump. So, on Twitter and on Google+, we only put out the Team Derek or Team Chris options, making it a 50-50 chance that one of us might win. I think I might have ruined the results a little bit on Facebook. We have 2 votes for John, no votes for me, and 6 votes for Chris. So as per our Facebook group, which you can find by looking for Defenders TV Podcast and joining our page on Facebook, as per that group, you are the winner, Chris. Well done.
Thank you.
There is a very different feeling on the open group that is Twitter and on Google+. Over on Twitter, we had 75% of the vote went to me for saying that Jessica Jones does not fly during the series of the show, saying that she does in fact just jump. And over on Google+, 82% of the vote went to me, saying Team Derek is right. Jessica Jones does jump, not fly. So,
of which all these are invalidated by the very fact that we can't compare them between Facebook, because little old me sat on the fence like Humpty Dumpty, wasn't there?
I'm calling foul. I'm calling it now. I'm going to do a Donald Trump. I want a recount.
Never do a Donald Trump, Chris. No. That rhymes with the wrong things.
That sounds like you've just farted. I've just Donald Trumped. I can only say that now until he's the next president of the United States. Then obviously I have to respect him to some degree.
Okay.
Or do I? I don't know.
That is our
protocol for this.
That is our next quiz and poll.
Do we have to respect Donald Trump?
Yeah.
There you go. Those are the results of our poll on whether Jessica Jones flies or jumps. Seems like we're still not getting any agreement in the podcast booth here. With that, we will leave you. If you want to follow our podcast, you can follow it on defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, where you can pick up the iTunes feed. You can get us in any good podcast catcher and some evil ones. Just search Defenders TV Podcast. And if you want to send us any feedback, you can follow us on Twitter at DefendersCast, where we do live tweet the episodes of Agent Carter as they're released on a Thursday night at 9 p.m. on Fox TV UK. If you want to send us in more detailed feedback, you can either join our Facebook group, our Facebook page over on Facebook. Obviously, search Defenders TV Podcast, or you can email us at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. Always love hearing from you and always love discussing your thoughts as well as our own. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back with you next week.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to put a sock on the doorknob.
And I'm Chris, and I'm going to see you next time, because I'm going off for a tortoise of fury.
Curried. Bye.
And I think, I don't know, it does, I would,
This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/Flickering Myth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.